After we open up, you'll do the oath of office, right?
Sure.
And then I'll take it from there. I made my on my cheat.
Oh, okay, good. Prepare.
Especially since it's the first time I'm doing it, so.
Got some, somewhere in this mess. I'll bring it out at some point. I got the bills. We'll figure it out. Okay, that sounds good. Oh, here we go.
He's getting his name
Oh,
unless you want to do it televised.
I don't know if you want to sign these now or later. Do you want me to keep them in the back? These are the bills. Okay. I'll do the date. It's easier. I know. I hear you. It's been a long day.
Is there more than that? No, it's
3. I won't do anything if they don't approve them. I'm sure they will, though. Thank you. And I need these guys to sign their contracts.
Okay.
But we'll get that.
Okay, I told Nick that, that's my view.
Yosemite subdivision, we were granted relief for the fronted on the newly created street, New York Avenue. Same situation. Yeah, but we had the grant variance on the front yard. So we've historically done this.
We also had a 3 street.
Yeah,
Or a
corner
pool
lot.
or something.
Corner lot.
We called it a corner lot, but it wasn't really a corner. It didn't fit the definition of a corner.
Right.
It was 2 corners.
It was, yeah, exactly, 2 corners.
All right, let's move on.
Sign your contracts at the end? And Craig will have contracts at the end. I don't have them right this minute.
So one person isn't here for the oath.
We're starting?
Give her a second. You ready? In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. If any member has reason to believe this meeting is being held in violation of this act, they should state so at this time. Have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Mrs. Werner?
Here.
Mr. Venuto?
Here.
Mr. Ledwin?
Here.
Mrs. Notch?
Here.
Ms. Sheehan?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Zexer?
Here.
Mr. Cataldo? Mr. Bodnar?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have oaths of office for some members.
Okay, I'm going to read this and then ask those who are being sworn in to say you agree, and then I will notarize your forms if you sign them for me. Norm Ledwin, Stacy Sheehan, and Marvin Zetzer. You ready? Each of you do solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Jersey, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state under the authority of the people, and that you will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of the office of Zoning Board of Adjustment Member according to the best of your ability, and that you will not use your office to grant preferential treatment nor to seek personal gain, favor, or advantage not available to the general public. Do all of you so swear or affirm?
Yes.
I do.
Okay, if you could please sign that and then pass it down, I'll notarize it for Karen, okay? Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you all for your service.
Okay, next, we have the election of the chairperson. I need a nomination.
I would like to nominate Terry Werner.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Nomination by Sam Benuto and seconded by Mrs. Notch.
Okay.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll have roll call.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr., I'm sorry, Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, next is election of the vice chair. I would like to nominate Sam Venuto. Need a second?
Second.
Nomination by Mrs. Werner, seconded by Mr. Ledwin. Any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll have roll call.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Venuto. Abstain?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the appointment of our board attorney. I would like to nominate Richard King of King Barnes Attorneys. I need a second.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Mrs. Werner, seconded by Mr. Venuto.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You know I enjoy working with you, and I really love this city, so thank you for letting me get paid to do a public service, because I really believe in it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the appointment of our board engineer. I'd like to nominate Craig Hurlis of Palestino and Associates.
Second.
Nomination by Mrs. Werner, seconded by Mrs. Notch.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have the adoption of meeting dates and times. Need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Ledwin, seconded by Mr. Zetzker.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the designation of the official newspaper for public notice. Council is using the Herald and the Atlantic City Press. Does anyone have any comments on that? Okay, we need a motion and a second.
Can I just say one thing about that? This is just me. I don't understand the concept of a backup newspaper. I believe there's just one paper that should be the official paper, because the public should know that they can look at one paper and know everything that's going on. It shouldn't have to go and see if an attorney missed the deadline for that paper and they happen to have published in the Atlantic City Press. So in my view, you're supposed to use the Herald unless for some reason the Herald isn't publishing or something. But I just don't, I'm not, it's not an either or. I think it's, the Herald's the official paper, and if there's an extraordinary circumstance that is not possible, then I guess the Atlantic City Press is the backup. But I don't understand the concept of, an attorney misses the deadline and then they publish in the press. The citizens shouldn't have to look at two papers to find out what's going on. There should be one official paper. So that's just my spin on it. So you can pass it as it is, but that's maybe just my opinion. But it'll be a published case someday.
I make a motion just to make it the Herald.
The Herald, okay.
So we're going to go with one newspaper then?
Oh, wait, hold on, I do have to say, if we're going to do that, I just want to say something else. I do represent the Herald by coincidence. If it said the Star and Wave and the Atlantic City Press, I'd have said the same thing, or if it said the Star, whatever. I've said that in years past. Some of you have been here a while, you know I've said that long before I represented the Herald. But I should mention that as well.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Sheehan to make the Herald our official newspaper. Can we have a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Venuto.
So can I just clarify, that we only have one newspaper then? That's it?
Yes.
I'm okay with that? I just want to make sure that's,
I think it's,
Okay.
I think the motion should be, it's the Herald, the official paper, but if some reason the Herald is no longer available, then it's the Atlantic City Press. But it's not a month-by-month choice of the attorney basis. It's the Herald, and if the Herald is not available anymore, then it's the press.
okay, thank you.
Appropriate motion.
Okay, so I'll do the roll call then?
I'm sorry? Yes, we have the motion and second.
Okay. Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next we need a motion to approve the resolution appointing Richard King as board attorney.
I'll make a motion.
This is the resolution part. This is,
I think Mr. Zexer motion. Oh, do you want to do the two together? We could do two together if you like.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you want to do Craig's and,
I thought maybe Rich wanted to do that. Is that what you like to do?
No, I didn't realize we were doing the two things separately.
probably should have done it
In the
together.
time it took, we would have done it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve resolution for Rich King as board attorney, and let's do Craig Hurlis at the same time as
Great.
board engineer. So we need a motion and a second.
I'll make the
I'll
motion.
make,
Okay, motion by Mrs. Notch.
second?
Seconded by Mr. Zetzker.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we need a motion to approve Abby's Cove LLC, 1302 Texas Avenue resolution.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Sheehan, seconded by Mr. Ledwin.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
And now we need a motion to approve the minutes of December 28th zoning board meeting.
Make the motion.
Motion by Ms. Sheehan, seconded by
Second?
Mr. Zetzer.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're up to the applications. So our first application is Lisa Castleton, 217 Perry Street.
Yes.
Would you like to come to the table?
Move up to the table and turn on your microphones, please. And if you can introduce yourselves.
Sure. Good evening. For the record, Nick Talvaki, Cooper Levinson, on behalf of the applicant, Lisa Castleton. Also with us is her husband, Steve. And we have Andy Schaefer, who is our planner, to provide some testimony. Mr. King, would you like him sworn in now and qualified?
Sure. Are your clients going to testify as well, or no?
I think Ms. Castleton may.
Okay, I'll swear them in just in case. And I was going to swear in our board engineer, Craig Hurlis. Do each of you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Yes. Thank you.
Just for the record, Andy, you're a New Jersey licensed planner and engineer,
Yes, that's correct.
and you've been qualified by planning and zoning boards in New Jersey as a planning expert?
Yes, including this one.
Okay. And I don't want to go too deep into it, but I offer Mr. Schaefer as a planning expert based upon his licensure, his testimony before this board in the past as an expert, and his other boards throughout the state.
That's acceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tavakia, can you bring your microphone a little closer? I'm having
Yes,
trouble hearing.
I'm sorry. Is that better?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. So, again, by notice of appeal dated September 27th, we challenged the determination of the zoning officer with respect to a zoning permit. So this is an appeal of that determination, effectively also serves as an interpretation. The issue at hand here is that the Castleton property fronts on a double street, Perry and Chestnut. And the question is, and they want to build a shed in their back. We have an 11-foot setback. As a rear yard, or a setback for an accessory structure in the rear would be 10 foot, so that would be compliant. But the zoning officer determined that the property has two fronts. The setback would therefore be 20 feet for a front and would require variance relief. I also note that at the time of the application, the ordinance permitted had a higher height. It's since been amended, so our proposed height is now compliant with the ordinance. So there's no issue there. So the question is, in this case, was the zoning officer in error in determining that our front and what constitutes the front and the rear? In our notice of appeal, and your ordinance does not define double-sided lots in terms of what's front, what's rear. It's silent. And there's a number of other definitions that are not in there that might aid this, and Mr. Hurlis went through some of those in his report. What we focused on is the definition of building front, and that's quoted in our appeal letter at 524 of your -4 of your ordinance, your land use code. Building front is defined as, quote, any wall of a building having a major entrance onto a street or pedestrian walkway, close quote. So we argue that if you look at this property and this adjacent properties, that the interpretation in this case, not necessarily in every case, but in this case should have been that Perry is our front, based on this definition. Again, major entrance onto a street or pedestrian walkway. The rear of our property is fenced. Our neighbors, when you look at it, and we'll have testimony from Andy, that is their rear, and we think the zoning officer in this case could have determined that our front is Perry, our rear is Chestnut, and had the authority to grant the zoning permit. Now, it may be a case where a zoning officer looks and says, well, I don't think that's the major front entrance. I look at the neighborhood, I look at the circumstances, and he can make that determination. And that's why, I mean, there's no definition. There's nothing in the ordinance that says what happens with a front and a rear. For example, corner lot is by definition two fronts. And a lot of ordinances will say any street that fronts on a public right-of-way is a front by definition. That's not the case here. So we think the intent was to provide some level of discretion to the zoning officer to determine, but we just think he erred in this case in determining that Chestnut was not our rear. We think the 10-foot setback applies. As I said, 11 foot is actually proposed. So with that, I'd like to have Mr. Schaefer go through his testimony, but that's essentially our argument that the only definition that's really relevant here is building fronts. The closest definition to what constitutes a front. There's no other definition. There's building setback or building yard, which is defined, but that's to a property line, that's to a street, that's to an alley. So we don't think that really helps in determining what constitutes the front. Again, the only definition in your ordinance is building front. It's the only one that we could find. And again, if you look at this case, this property, this is the Perry is the front. And we think actually, in this case, Chestnut really functions more of an alleyway than any kind of a major, again, in the ordinance, major entrance onto a street. We don't think it works in this case. So that's kind of the overview, and I'll ask Andy to provide his testimony. Andy, do you have some exhibits you want to introduce?
I do. The first one is the plot plan showing Chestnut Street and Perry Street, and the subject matter of the interpretation is a 10 by 24 foot shed that we are proposing.
All right, let's just do some housekeeping. Mr. King offered that as Exhibit A1.
Okay, does he have a microphone over there?
Andy,
Andy,
microphone?
Andy, just grab your microphone from here so you can carry it with you. Or grab that one, that's cool. Is it
So
on?
this is Exhibit A1.
A1,
Is a
and
plot plan.
The plot plan, is there a date on that, Andy?
I'm sorry?
Is there a date on your plan that you're marking into the record?
That's the same plan that was in your packet, right?
Same plan as.
Okay.
I wasn't going to mark it. If it's in the packet, I just said
That's
it's the
fine.
plot
It's
plan in the
i- it's
packet.
identical, and in case anybody wants to see it, we do have the
Is that
elevation
ZP
view also.
Is that ZP1?
What?
Yes.
Okay.
ZP1 and ZP2.
Bottom corner,
Yeah,
ZP1?
let's see, that way we don't have to keep the big poster board.
That's
thing.
fine.
It's just in the packet. Go ahead. Was it 10 by 24 foot, the shed, did you say?
Correct. 10 by 24-foot shed is proposed that I believe it's already gone through the HPC. It's already gone through the HPC in terms of the.
It has not.
It has not.
No,
It's due to
No,
go.
the zoning was a big enough issue. We need
Okay.
to get past zoning.
Can you hold the mic up? I can't understand
can't
you from
understand it.
over here.
None of us.
Still not loud enough? Okay.
No, yeah,
You got it?
thank you.
So it was not approved by the HPC?
No, we have not gone in yet.
Not gone to the HPC?
But you can tell by the design of it that it's going to be.
Okay.
So, Chestnut Street is a 16-foot wide right-of-way, and it abuts the parking lot, and my aerial photograph looking straight down did escape me on the way down here. But it's 435 feet from one end to the other. There are 6-foot-high fences along all of it, or a building face. And along that 435 feet, there are 4 buildings that have essentially a zero setback, accessory structures that exist, garage, outbuildings, that sort of thing. And the rest of it is a wall of 6-foot-high fence, as well as the building at the intersection, having basically a zero setback also, and that's a fairly large building of Chestnut. Now, I show you this, I promise to not try to argue this as a variance, because it's not. But I do want to compare Chestnut to an alley. And the reason I want to do that is because the alley has a special purpose in the city ordinance. So this is a 16-foot wide with a slightly narrower cartway, just to give you an idea what the entrance of that looks like.
So these are exhibits, or am I missing, do we have?
No, these are exhibits, and they're not in the pack.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll mark those. Andy, mark, if you could, A1 and identify again what that exhibit shows.
That's a street view of the entrance to Chestnut. And then, just for the sake of comparison, this is the alley known as Borough Hall Alley. Notice the width and so forth and the setbacks are consistent with what exists on Chestnut.
Hold on, we got to do the A2 thing. So
Yeah.
so this is, every
A2.
time you do one of these, we got to.
I got it.
So A2 is the Borough Alley.
Borough Hall Alley, yes.
Excuse me, this is West Cape May, correct?
No. Well, yes, the western part of Cape May, yes.
Wait,
No, West Cape May is a whole municipality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did cross Broad Street.
Yeah, it's,
Yes, it is.
it's not in our
Excuse
municipality.
me.
that's all right.
Okay,
Do we withdraw that one then?
yes,
Okay.
please.
A2.
But still turning back to the alley in the city ordinance is known, will have a 20-foot wide right-of-way. It doesn't necessarily define the paving width. And it also, this one, like I said, is 16 feet. And I want to read to you the definition of an alley. An alley in your ordinance is defined as a minor way which is used primarily for vehicular service access to the back side of properties that are otherwise abut on a street. In other words, they front on a street. So I'm trying to say here is Chestnut behaves more like,
Excuse me, I had to, where is that located in the ordinance? Definition.
I believe I have that with me.
I just want to make sure you weren't going through West Cape May's definition of an alley, that's why I was
I was
just
pretty
asking.
sure I was in Cape May.
Okay.
Forgive me, please, I'm sorry about
It's in
that.
Cape May, a minor way, it's the definition of alley.
This is about the only inference or reference to the rear of a lot that has double public access or right-of-way conditions, where this does has a front and back. I could not find another reference to a double front lot. Corner lots, of course.
No, but, can you just go over what makes that an alley and not a street?
Well, by its physical nature, in the sense that it does give people access, judging by the amount of parking, for those homes that front on Perry in the rear. So they have access to the rear through those 6-foot-high fences with gates. And there are several outbuildings, 4 outbuildings that front on, or excuse me, abut Chestnut with almost a 0 setback. And the total right-of-way width of Chestnut is 16 feet, which is actually less than the ordinance definition of an alley of 20 feet.
Okay. I guess there's a definition of street,
Yes,
and street says there's 5 different classifications.
that's correct.
Arterial, collector, minor streets, which is those which are used primarily for access to the abutting properties, marginal access streets, and alleys. And I guess I'm just asking, and I'm not trying to, this isn't cross-examination, I'm curious now, because no
No,
one mentioned this
you're absolutely
before.
right. Stacy, you were correct. I was looking at West Cape May, because the alleys are 20 feet wide, not because it was in the ordinance. So you're right.
Well, don't panic, because there's definitions for, the alley is the same in our ordinance. So I'm in Cape May, and its definition of alley is a minor way which is used primarily for vehicular service access to the back or the side of properties otherwise abutting on a street.
That's what I read, yes.
So that's, I think I'm in Cape May. yeah.
It doesn't yes, you are, but it doesn't necessarily define the width of it.
But I think the more relevant conversation is this definition of street that I've never read before, that has 5 choices, 5
Yes.
different types of streets. Arterial streets, collector streets, minor streets, marginal access streets, and alleys. And I was just asking you why you think this is an alley and not a minor street. And it's not supposed to be a difficult question. I'm really curious if it was the width of it or something, but I'm not seeing that distinction.
It's not clear, I agree, but it's because of the width and because it is a double-fronted lot and it accesses the rear, and it's been behaving as rear access to these properties for many years. I hate to use the analogy, but it quacks like a duck,
But,
but it's named a street.
right, so it's dedicated as a street,
Correct. Albeit a narrow one, but a street.
yeah.
Yeah, but under this definitions, alleys are streets. It's one of the 5 kinds of streets.
Everywhere a street or public right-of-way is referred to, it refers to public streets, right-of-ways, alleys. It lumps them all together, every reference in the ordinance. That's true.
I don't want us to go off the track here. The issue is building front, the definition of building front, and it talks about the ordinance, a building having a major entrance onto a street or pedestrian walkway. So the question in this case is, does Perry Street function as the side of the building that has the major entrance?
Clearly, in all the houses along that 435-foot stretch, every house does front on Perry and has their major access to the Perry Street as a front.
So let me just ask the question the opposite way. On Chestnut, is there a major entrance onto Chestnut from this property or even the adjoining properties?
No, there is not.
So by definition, could you, on this, okay. So if Perry functions as the front, what's the setback for, the setback for?
20 feet.
And what's the setback for rear or accessory structure not in the front?
10 feet.
And we propose 11.
We propose 11 feet, yes.
Is that essentially the basis for the argument that, for this appeal, that the Chestnut side is not the major entrance and therefore is not the building front and therefore is not the front yard for purposes of the 20-foot setback?
Yes, that is my opinion.
Lisa, do you have anything you want to add?
Not at this point. I think, I agree with everything that's been said, for sure.
I have a question.
Yes.
You park in the rear and you enter the house, how?
Oh, sorry.
You may answer at least.
Yeah, well, we enter it through the back door.
Through the back.
Or the side door at the
Where
kitchen.
do you get your mail? Where-
Front door,
Front door?
yeah,
Which is, for purpose of the record, Perry Street.
correct.
Yes.
Correct.
And when we go out the house, go to Perry Street, everything's out the front. And that's true with everybody on our block.
And has been for years.
For the 28 years we've owned 217,
And,
and
yeah.
then 15, and then 13.
Right. And I mean, it's been this way as long as we've owned the property, and all of our neighbors have owned the properties. Our backyards are our backyards. That's where we park. We have, the big parking lot is right behind us. And having the 6-foot fence, having it treated as a rear yard is really important to us. Just from a functional standpoint, our backyards are useless to us with 4-foot fences. We have a parade of people every summer. That lot is big. People in and out, it's noisy. We have delivery trucks surrounding the Lafayette Street parking lot are businesses, and all of their trash gets picked up, and all their food deliveries get delivered. So this isn't, behind us is a very commercial atmosphere with a lot of people coming through. And it's, you know, almost all of the people that come through are wonderful people. We are really blessed to have the visitors that we have in Cape May, but there are a few bad eggs out there. And it's very disconcerting, having had a few interactions with them, to know that the only thing between me and them is a 4-foot fence. You know, my grandkids are in the yard, the dogs are in the yard. We want to be able to enjoy our yard. There are K-9 sheriffs out there all winter long. You might have 10 or 15 sheriff's cars out there with the police dogs, which is no big deal, but the dogs are barking. It's just not a residential area behind us by any stretch of the imagination. There are car shows. There have been car shows
That's
in
a
the
very
lot.
persuasive variance argument.
Okay, well, good. We'll have it for later. We'll back pocket that then. But I'm sorry then, and so I can
No,
speak to
you
your
answered my
point.
question.
Okay.
Thank you.
So is this going to be a storage shed? What's the use of this outbuilding?
So the shed will be used a little bit for storage, but the main point of the shed is that we have an awful lot of people in our family. Our extended family lives in 217. We live in 213, that are into physical fitness. My son is a personal trainer. And I wanted to get all of the equipment out of the houses, because we have Pelotons and treadmills and weights and dumbbells and pull-up stuff all over our homes. And it would be really nice to have that out of the house and in the yard. And there's really no place for it in the house.
Is there going to be air conditioner or heating in there?
I would like to have a mini split in there so that it can be used year-round, because the equipment shouldn't sit in an unregulated environment.
Does that change it from a shed?
I just heard something about heating it. Is that what you said?
Yes.
A mini split heating and air conditioning, yes.
Mini
This is
split.
habitable space at this point.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, you gonna run water out there, or?
No, we don't need any water.
Once you start temperature controlling it, we start looking at it as habitable space. So give that some thought.
Yeah. Maybe we won't then.
No, that's a good point.
It's not going to be a deal breaker.
Has this been constructed already?
No.
No.
Well, only reason why I asked, because I thought in here it said it was constructed already.
No. Oh, no.
That's the only reason why, when I went to
Oh,
drive past it, I
no,
couldn't
no,
find
It
it.
has not been constructed. No,
Okay.
in fact, it hasn't even been to the HPCs.
Okay, that's a little,
Okay.
I'm only asking because they said it was constructed already. That's,
No, this is not. This is a new proposal.
and I didn't see it constructed.
My report indicates there's an existing shed on the site.
Yes, behind 217.
And that's shown on the plan?
Yes.
Right, on the left-hand side
Why
of
don't
the,
you go through your,
Can I ask one question first? Did HBC approve this?
No, this has not been before HPC, because we have the general design of it in mind, but to go through the cost of finishing that design, only to find out that this can't even be constructed, to me was not,
So we're here first.
we're here first.
We haven't gone to HPC yet.
So we'll go
I have
through.
I have a couple of questions. Why couldn't you move that shed?
I'm sorry?
Why couldn't you move that so you
Oh,
comply?
that shed is being used for the bicycles, the
No,
gardening.
no, no, I'm
equipment.
talking about the new proposed.
Oh, the proposed shed.
Why wouldn't you move that so you'd comply with the setbacks?
You mean 20 feet
yeah.
forward? Because it would be sitting way in the middle of the yard, and it renders most of our yard useless, not to mention it'll look really weird.
There's three properties, as you know, so there's 217 and then 215, which we converted to a yard, and then 213, which we live in now. So that 215, which was going to be built on, and we challenged it, and we got the property, that's just a nice yard for, and we don't want to
It's just a
clutter
nice
it up.
open space.
So is this on just the one property? Because you had the three properties there together. So is this half on one and half on another?
Okay, so it's a little confusing. The properties are listed in the records as 217, 215, and 213. And 215, at one time, was a separate lot. It was combined with 217.
Okay.
So it's really only, 217 is one property now that combines 217 and 215. 213 always has been its own lot and still is.
So this combined lot is where the shed is on? So it's not on any other?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
So we'll go ahead with Craig's report, and then we can ask any other questions.
Okay, good evening, everyone. The latest review memorandum that I did for this application is dated October 19th, 2023. This is a project located in the RS Residential Seasonal District. You've heard testimony from the applicants. What they're seeking tonight is essentially an appeal from the zoning officer's decision. On page 2 of 5, I did recommend deeming this application complete based on the nature of this application and the information they've provided. I'll move onto the appeal section on page 2 of 5. Item number 1, this is just states the zoning board's power in hearing and deciding those appeals. Item number 2 is the appeals procedure is set forth in the land use code and the New Jersey statute. So we can circle back to that if there's any questions. But on page 3 of 5, it indicates the reasons the zoning official cited for denying the application. Under item number 1, the proposed outbuilding is 10 feet by 24 feet with a proposed height of 14 foot 8 inches. 2, the proposed location is 8 feet from the side property line and 10 feet from the property line abutting Chestnut Street. The minimum side yard setback in the RS district is 8 feet. The minimum setback from Chestnut Street is 20 feet. Per section 525-19B1, the minimum building setback line is 20 feet, proposed is 10 feet. So he's saying that that doesn't conform to that. Per section 525-55A4A, the maximum height is 10 feet, where it was proposed as 14 foot 8 inches. And per section 525, under number 5, per section 525-55A4C, no structure may be permitted between the building front and the street line. And then 6, it says, it appears the existing shed was constructed without permits and approvals, and/or approvals, and I believe they're talking about the existing shed that's there, not what's proposed. There is no record of this shed on the property file, and aerial photos show from 3/25/2019 does not show this shed existing. Proper paperwork must be submitted for this shed review and approval. So he's questioning how that shed came to be in that yard. And then said the application is denied.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Because I would like to respond to that, because it's making it sound like I was trying to do something underhanded and build the shed at some point.
This is just, I'm just citing what the
It doesn't
zoning
matter.
official.
Okay.
I always instruct the board, and I'll instruct them now. We don't give you a break for having built it, and we don't punish you for having built it.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. We're just viewing it as a zoning application for a shed.
Okay, very
So
good.
You don't have to explain yourself. I know you say you didn't do it, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So, and then item number 4, PA offers, Paulstein and Associates offers the following review comments in response to the applicant's narrative in support of the appeal. So the application, the first letter A under 4 talks about when the new ordinance 514 of 2023 came into effect. I believe the zoning officer reviewed it under the old standards, which I believe is appropriate, and recommended denial because at that point, the allowable height for that accessory structure was 10 feet. That has now been, there is a new ordinance in effect, so I believe that you can go back and reapply for that and be subject to those new zoning regulations. Under subsection B of 4, the applicant contends that the property sits between Perry Street and Chestnut Street, with the front of the property on Perry Street and the rear of the property where the proposed shed will be located on Chestnut Street. There is no definition for dual frontage lots in the Cape May ordinance, which would control which is the front side or if it has two front sides. The applicant offers the definition of building front. So from section 525-4, I took that right out of our code definitions. Building front is defined as any wall of a building having a major entrance onto a street or pedestrian walkway. I don't know what major entrance is. That's not defined. So that's up for interpretation. And I offered other definitions that may be appropriate for consideration, and I will go through those. Definition of building setback line: an established line within a property defining the minimum required distance between the face of any structure and an adjacent right-of-way, street line, or property line. This face as measured to the structure includes sun parlors, foyers, bay windows, porches, and protecting eaves, dormers, gutters, steps, pertinent structural and mechanical systems, and any other solid projections and entrances. Corner lot. This is not a corner lot, but it's very similar to one, and the corner lot typically has frontage on two streets. And the definition of that for corner lot: any lot which occupies the interior angle formed by the intersection of two or more streets. The street line is defined as a right-of-way line. Yard, front is an area extending across the full width of a lot and laying between the front property line of the lot and the nearest wall or face of the building as defined in this section, building setback line, and the depth of the front yard shall be measured at right angles to the front property line of the lot. Rear yard is an area extending across the full width of any lot and lying between the rear property line of a lot and the nearest wall or face of the building as defined in this section, building setback line. The depth of the rear yard shall be measured at right angles to the rear property line. Side yard is less appropriate for this, but I can go through that if the board desires. So utilizing the definitions of yard, front, and building setback line, we believe that we have historically reviewed the applications and considered building setbacks for principal structures based on the presence of adjacent right-of-ways, whether they're alleys, whether they're streets, avenues, etc. The language for controls for other outbuildings is less clear. The following is stated in section 525-55A4, and I believe that this is another outbuilding. So under A, the maximum height is 10 feet. Under B, no structure may be within 5 feet of any property line. Subsection C, no structure may be permitted between the building front line and the street line. And subsection D, in no instance can the amount of lot coverage by the principal building and outbuildings exceed the percentage specified for the district in which the principal building is located. Okay, there is no definition of building front. That's absent. That's not, there's no specific definition in our code. So in that absence, we have consistently, and this is talking about my office, I'm not talking about the zoning office. We have consistently applied the building setback line definition because we believe the intent of the ordinance is not to allow any accessory structures between the principal building structure and any right-of-way line. It's consistent with our treatment of pools. It's consistent with our treatment of accessory structures. We believe that the intent is to preserve the streetscape along any right-of-way line. So I don't, that's just how we've done things in the past, and I believe the intent of the ordinance is not to have accessory structures between the face of any structure and a street line.
Madam Chair, may I respond briefly to Mr. Hurlis?
Let me just
Let-
finish
I'm
up.
sorry.
Just finish.
And then the board can ask me questions, and then you can ask me questions.
Sure.
Okay. So that is my belief as a planner, that that's what the ordinance intent is. And that's just based on all of the definitions and treatment of accessory structures throughout the code, preserves that, I think the intent is to preserve the streetscape so that there's not accessory structures, pools, et cetera, within those front yard setbacks.
Craig, can you talk about briefly the, I'll do it, never mind. I'll wait.
You can ask me too, but.
Actually, I have a question for Mr. Hurlis.
Sure.
Is there, in our ordinance, is there any other definition of an outbuilding? 'Cause I preface that with this. We have, pictures of these, the diagrams that we have here, and it's been described as a shed, but it's a 24-foot by 10-foot building, over 14 feet high with a cupola on top. So I guess it's with a single door. Could call it a shed, but it also looks, there's a lot going on here as far as this particular structure. So my question is there something that gives us more guidance as far as an outbuilding?
No. There's
Like-
no definition of other outbuildings. And I'm looking up the requirements for this, if you forgive me for 1 second while I reference our code.
Yeah, I guess to expand on Mr. Bodner's question, is there a limit on how big a shed can be?
You asked about a shed.
Well, that's, okay. Is that-
Yes, the answer to your question is yes, there is a limit to how big a shed can be. Other outbuildings, I don't believe there is. So, but let me,
Well, I want to understand something. Are you saying that there's restrictions on sheds different than the other outbuildings?
let me look up, I'm going to go.
I believe
through-
garages
go-
are
I'm going to
treated
go through
differently.
the difference of standards and code requirements between sheds and other outbuildings. Let me just find that for 1 second. Let's see. Accessory uses, 55, yep, okay. Just want to make sure I'm referencing the right section. Okay. So, section 525-55 is titled Dwelling Accessory Uses. The first subsection A deals with single or two-family dwelling accessory uses. So that has standards for professional offices within the structure, animal shelters, detached garages, other outbuildings, patios, terraces, and decks, and other accessory use controls. So the other outbuildings section has a maximum height requirement, a setback of 5 feet from any property line. No structure is permitted between the building front line and the street line, in no instance can the amount of lot coverage by the principal building and outbuildings exceed the percentage specified for the district in which the principal building is located, which essentially says it has to conform with the lot coverage requirements. Let me find the sheds. And in that section, there is no control for sheds. take me a moment to find the shed section.
The shed section looks like it's in different zones.
That's where I'm looking for.
I see it in the R4 modified medium-density residential district. I'm not coming up with sheds in other districts.
So this is a project in the RS district, correct?
Yeah, the word shed doesn't appear in the RS district,
Correct.
unless it's incorporated in that thing that says,
Guest house and multifamily dwellings, offering.
I'm not sure this matters much,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. I mean,
Okay.
as much as it's curiosity, it's either whether you can put stuff in, whether this is a front yard or a backyard. That's what you're deciding whether it's a front yard or a backyard.
Well,
That's what
wouldn't it be also if the building's larger than it's allowed to be?
It doesn't matter.
That's not what the zoning officer didn't cite that. So their appeal is from the decision of the zoning officer. So he classified this as an other outbuilding. And I just read the standards to you, so.
Okay, but you
Um,
also mentioned in the standards that it's 10 feet, right?
Right. But
Right,
that-
and this is almost 20 feet.
So he cited the fact that they were over the height requirement as a reason for denial. So I believe he got that right, and, it's clear.
Okay.
At that time, the ordinance may have changed since then, and the applicant is allowed to reapply based on whatever the standard is, but at the time of application, these standards were in effect, and I believe that he got that right.
Well, aren't they still in effect when you say there has to be a 10 feet? Because you just read it from the,
There's another ordinance, 514-2023, came into effect approximately around September 12th of 2023.
okay, but that still says it can't be greater than 15 feet.
Right, and they're at 14 foot 8 inches.
Well, they're at 20 feet.
No.
The setback is 11.
20 feet is a setback.
And the maximum height.
It's 14.8.
Where?
Well, I guess when I saw it, it was 14, then another 5 feet on top of it.
I didn't pick that up.
No,
Yeah,
no, it's
it's
14.8 total.
I
The
just,
20 feet, was that the width of it?
I mean, I'm just looking at this picture here that you gave us. It has 14 feet and then 5 feet. So it's 20 feet.
Oh, then the cupola should not be on there. I mean, unless my architect knows something I don't know, that cupolas, there's a special
Cupolas
section on
typically are
cupolas.
not counted.
They're not counted.
What? An accessory structure?
I don't know about an accessory structure, but they're typically on a principal structure, they're ornamental and they don't count towards it.
That must have been what the architect was
So,
thinking then.
I'm not
Mr. Crossland was-
I'm not going to offer an opinion on this because I believe the zoning officer got it right at the time where he said, this is denied because it is 14 foot 8 inches where only 10 feet is permitted.
Yeah, but if it's a 20-foot structure, he got it wrong.
He denied it
Still-
for
it's still denied.
exceeding the height.
Right, but he denied it exceeding the height because it was greater than 10 feet. But I think the height thing's a red herring because now it's 15 feet.
Okay.
But it sounds like the plans that are before us are 20 feet, and we're not saying that's okay. We're not ruling on that tonight. Mr. Crossland apparently has a cupola on top of an accessory structure, and if I live next door to it, I mean, it's a 20-foot structure in the rear of a building, 4 feet from the side yard. I have to see where cupolas are.
Yeah, I don't think the board is tasked with evaluating.
I understand, but I don't want us
new
to,
rep-
if we say that I think that the limit that we should be applying is the 15 feet, okay? I want this record to be clear, though, that Ms. Sheehan has pointed out that it's actually, the picture we were given is a 20-foot structure, and we're not saying that that's a 15-foot structure and eliminating the cupola. So that's a whole nother convincing that Mr. Crossland will have to do.
Is it possible that cupolas don't count, that they're ornamentation? I mean, I can't imagine.
Possible or not, that's not.
Oh,
for us
okay.
Tonight. What
Okay.
I'm saying is, we're not saying it's okay to put a 20-foot structure back there.
Okay.
And we're not saying the cupolas can be on accessory structures, and that's okay. We're not deciding that tonight.
Okay.
Okay?
So, just for clarity, on the height issue, our proposal is 14.8. If the
Yep.
plans show more than that, that's an error for right now, and we'll deal with that.
And if the plans show cupola, we're not saying that that's okay.
And I
Right,
get that. So
exactly.
for purposes of the appeal, The case law says that under the time of application, we really get the benefit of the new law. I don't think we have to reapply for height. So I think 15 is the correct height. There's a case on that, and Mr. King and I discussed that point. So I think we're good on height. You mentioned that. I think that's right. The sole issue, I think, is this a rear yard or is this a front yard? And what setback applies? Is it the 10-foot for accessory setback, or is it 20-foot? And if I may address briefly 2 comments in Mr. Hurlis's report, because I think they're important. Mr. Hurlis points to yard, front, and building setback as the, should be reviewed, those definitions, but I don't think they get us anywhere. Building setback line talks about the minimum required distance from the building to either a street, a right-of-way, or a property line, but it doesn't tell you what the setback is. In other words, it doesn't tell you, building setback line, what the front, side, or rear is. It just tells you that that's how you measure, but it doesn't tell you what it is. So I don't think that gets us anywhere. Similarly, I don't think yard front gets us anywhere, because that just says that the full width of a lot lying between the front property line of the lot. That's the question. What is the front? So again, I don't think they answer the question. The closest thing that answers the question of what constitutes the front, the only thing that we could find is the definition of building front line, not building, I'm sorry, is building front. And building front is the definition in our appeal, any wall of a building having a major entrance onto a street or pedestrian walkway. We argued that our Perry Street entrance is our major. We think that's consistent with the neighborhood, and we think a zoning officer can look at this ordinance in any specific application for a zoning permit and determine what the major entrance is. We think he erred in this case, but the definitions of building setback line doesn't tell you what the front is, because it could be a side yard, because it mentions property line, and similarly, yard front doesn't tell you anything, because it doesn't tell you what the front is, so you don't know. So it's just telling you how to calculate something, but it doesn't tell you what those things are. It doesn't tell you what the front is in either case. So again, the one thing, the only thing in the ordinance that talks about a front is the definition of building front. And the building front is, I think, as our testimony and our belief, is Perry Street. If that's the front, the board concludes that Perry Street's the front, Chestnut can't be the front then, because there can only be one major, as far as I can tell. That has to be the rear. Therefore, the 10-foot accessory setback has to apply, not the 20-foot. So that's our case in a nutshell.
I'll give you my thoughts on it, if I could. Remember, this is just my opinion, okay? I'm not the decider, and I'm not an advocate until you guys decide something. Then I advocate for what you decided. But until then, I just try to call them like I see them. Sometimes I agree with the interpretation of the attorney, the applicant. Sometimes I don't. In this case, I respectfully don't. And I think the problem, I think the confusion, I don't know if confusion is the right word, but you can't think of a lot in isolation. A lot exists around other lots, okay? An example is the Velvento application that we had, where that is a lot that fronts on Velvento and New York Avenue. And we treated that as having 2 front yards. Why? A bunch of reasons. There was a street on each side, but also for the people that lived across from that street, from where they're sitting, they're viewing a front yard of the house across the street from them. So in one sense, this thing about having what we call a through lot, generally is what it's called, a through lot that touches 2 streets. You have to think of the houses that are on the other side of the street that are looking at that house, okay? You also have to think of the houses on the side of it, all right? Because the reading that they're giving to the building front, that tells you what's in the front of a building, not what the front yard is. So if the front of the building is determined by where the particular house puts its exit and entrance, which, by the way, the testimony in this record is that they enter from the back, but leaving that aside, that means each house can decide what their building front is, which would mean each house can decide what their front yard is. So if you have 3 houses and they're both through lots, one house could have their front on Perry, the house next door may have their building front on Chestnut. And now, when they're in their front yard, right 8 feet from where from them is a shed. So it's a streetscape issue. And I think although this applies to corner lots, I think a section that no one cited yet, 525-59, Common Development Standards, which is an interesting category, but it talks about corner lots. And what it says, think about the concept that it's addressing when it says this. The building setback line for a corner lot shall be the same as required along the same street for the adjoining lot. When a lot line abuts a street, it shall be treated as a front yard in respect to setbacks. Now, think about what they're saying there. They're thinking about the lots that are next to the corner lot because there's a streetscape. And they treat those two as front yards because of the people next to them, it's next to their front yard, right? So, in my opinion, this front-back concept, when you're on two streets and people kind of pick which one's their entrance, you have to treat them both as front yards. Because to the people around that property, it's going to function as a front yard. They're across the street. I live on Grant. Well, I live on Windsor. My address is Windsor, but it runs through to Grant. Some of you might remember there was an application right behind me the other month. Well, to me, that's clearly the backyard of my house. But to everybody on Grant, that's a front yard. So if we stuck a shed 8 feet from there, for the people who live on Grant, there's now a shed right next to their driveway as they pull out onto their street. Okay, now ours happens to be 2 lots and theirs is 1 lot, so it seems different, but it's really not, because it has houses across the street and houses next door. So I think the intent of the ordinance is to treat yards with consideration of the people around them. And for the people around them, this could function as a front yard. I think the testimony they've given is persuasive that on this particular property, which starts to sound like variance language, on this particular property, this functions more like a backyard. It's like an alley. There's a liquor store behind it. They didn't mention that, by the way.
Yes.
So if they come in for a variance and everybody around it gets notice, because I don't think this requires 200-foot notice.
We did send notice.
You did send notice, but it doesn't require it, right?
We said that, we
did
basically,
it.
we gave notice that if we won the appeal, we'd build a.
Right, but we can't function on that level.
No, yeah.
So if they give notice to the houses around them, and the neighbors don't come out and say, hey, we don't like this front shed in the front yard, maybe one will, maybe one will say, hey, that's like our front yard, and we use that, and we don't want to shed there, and you have to listen to it. But I think this is a variance application. And I think you would be going against a bunch of other applications you've done in the past. I could only think of one, but I know there's more. There was a swimming pool with 3 fronts that we treated all as front yards. So my personal opinion is that you should treat this as a front yard. But that's just my opinion. You guys are going to decide. They've made their arguments. Credible attorney.
Could
Make your decision.
can I make a few comments?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you for listening.
That's good. So first of all, if you go down the Chestnut Street alley and you look at every house, as the photographs show, there are houses right on it. Every house on Perry Street, and our houses have been there for over 150 years. Obviously, the front is Perry Street. Every house would be in violation of this. Every one. There are structures way beyond, every single house would be in violation. There is nobody in the back of us. There is a parking lot that leads to a liquor store. There is no issue at all about that. In fact, the parking lot goes right up to there's no space between the alley and the parking lot. And the people drive right out forward. If you were to put a curb along that, you'd be taking out a whole bunch of parking spaces. So in the context, putting aside the legal issues because it's not defined, but in the context, no one would look at this and think this is a front yard. No one.
I understand, but you have to understand, we know a little bit, I speak for myself, we know a little bit about zoning. And
Right.
what you're talking about is the particular characteristics of your street and your property.
Right.
But that's not how you do ordinance interpretations.
Right.
That's not how you do
But-
that. That's how you do variances. So your argument is a very credible one, but for a different kind of application, in my opinion. But
Well,
that's okay. But
no, I understand. I actually don't think the code does address this issue, and I think the arguments we make are actually talking about the language of the code. It's,
better.
yeah, but,
next year we'll-
right, and,
If I could just address the corner lot issue. Corner lots are treated very separately in the code, and for good reason, because very often on corner lots, you're facing another residential district, and you want that side that's facing the residential houses to look nice, and that's good code. I think this code is actually a pretty good code, has a few little changes that need to be made, but it's a good code. The corner lot code also says that of the remaining 2 lot lines that are not facing streets, not abutting streets, the shorter of those becomes your rear yard. And the code does this because residential properties need rear yards. If you don't have a rear yard, the rest of the code sort of implodes, and you end up with these odd issues like, is it the front, is it back, where do I put this? Where do you put your mechanicals? You can't have a 6-foot fence if you don't have your rear yard. Where do you hide your trash cans from your neighbors? Where do you hide your swing set? I mean, and then you can't have a swimming pool. So for the homeowner, if you don't have a designated rear yard, your land becomes much less functional, really. You can have a much more functional property if you have a rear yard. I mean, I think you could, I understand what's going on over near Poverty
Put
Beach.
the shed on, do you think you put the shed on Perry? Suppose you wanted to put the shed.
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely
Why
not.
not?
It's a front, it's a front.
But if you make the back your functional main entrance,
It is not our functional main entrance.
suppose tomorrow you board up your door on Perry and you do what you said, what you've testified you're doing. You pull in the back and you exit in it, you go in and out the back door and make that your front.
We go in and out of the front door way more than the back.
On
Let's-
Perry?
No, but, no, let me answer this. Let me, no, but the problem is your interpretation.
We understand your position.
Your interpretation is one in which there will be no backyards, and there's nowhere in the code that says that. It's never been the case in 200 years here, you know.
And yeah, see, I guess if you take that if you take through lots and say there's no rear yard, those would be the only lots in Cape May that don't have a rear yard. Even corner lots have a designated rear yard, and for good reason, because the rest of the code is written so that all the other aspects of the code, like the mechanicals, where do they go, blah, 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 all work. You take away the rear yard, and you've thrown everything else in the code into disarray. I understand you don't want people saying, this is my front, this is my back. I think that happened on West Perry was one of the homes, and it doesn't look right. But you, as the zoning board, certainly have the ability to say to a developer, and this will be the front street. This will be the front of the street. This will be the back of the street. If all of the backs of the streets have 6-foot fences, and you can have a landscaping code, or if you have a 6-foot fence, you have to have trees, whatever, it will look lovely. And it will hide all of the stuff that everybody needs to put in their backyard, like sheds and pools and everything else. So you have a code that works if you follow it and don't start creating rules like through lots don't get rear yards. That's where I think things start falling apart and things become complicated. And there's no reason for that complication.
I just don't think
I-
the zoning law meant to have a situation where you'd have no rear yard. That, to me, sounds absurd, and nobody lives like that. So,
No, because part of the zoning code is to create streetscapes that are not just nice, they look nice, but they need to be safe and they need to be functional. They need to allow the homeowner to have a functional use of their property.
Can I ask a question, a clarifying question here? We are not giving any variances out here tonight, correct? Because it's just to say,
None of them requested.
right, this is just to say, was the zoning officer correct in what he did, right? Because I'm getting a little bit more clarity here, because I was asking questions about the height and things like that, which isn't what we're giving here. Like, and also with the fact that the resolution you included here talks about no outbuilding may be used for human habitation or living accommodation, and you want to put heat and air in. So my question is, we're not approving any of that. We're just saying, did the zoning officer say what he did? And if we agree with the zoning officers, then they might come back to us and we might approve it underneath variances, correct? Correct. Yes. Okay. So we're just saying, did the zoning officers do what he did? And if we agree with him, then they can apply for a variance and come before us and get the
Correct.
variance.
The next application on the agenda is an appeal, and in the case where the appeal does not go their way, they've asked for the variance to be granted tonight.
Okay.
This applicant is only dealing with the appeal. So we're only seeing whether there was an error of the zoning officer.
And then my next clarifying question has to do with when the lawyer said he doesn't have to reapply. And I don't understand why he wouldn't have to reapply for that other height variance. I didn't understand why, because we're not given anything. So to me, he would have to reapply, correct?
If I could clarify, I don't think, because we're at 14.8, and there's a case that says that we get the benefit of the current law, if you decide in favor of us on the setback issue, the zoning permit should issue, we wouldn't have to reapply for the height, because the current law is 15 feet. And-
Right, but your plan state 20 feet.
Well, that I didn't realize, that's a
Yeah.
mistake. But
So that's what I'm saying. So what you're saying you don't have to reapply, but your plans say 20.
we would have to correct that.
Change
I was referring to the 15 feet, or 14.8. That's-
I think we need clarification, too, as to whether a cupola is included in the height of an accessory building.
We're not making that determination.
No, I understand, but I think if we could approve this on a building height of 14.8, eliminate the cupola, I would be fine with that and go forward, and if a cupola is allowed, we could come back and deal with that, because, I mean, this still has to go through the HPC.
I don't want to make more of the height issue. I think, all I'm trying to say is I think the only issue on appeal is the setback, whether it's 10 foot or 20 foot. I think the height, and as your attorney mentioned, is no longer an issue because of the change in the ordinance. The process, whether we apply or not apply, to me, that's not really, that's a procedural thing. So I don't want to make it more complicated than it needs to be. I think it's just an appeal of the setback for this proposed structure.
If we overturn the zoning official tonight, can they go ahead and build this?
No,
No, HPC.
I mean, without HPC.
yeah.
If they didn't have to go to HPC, they could build this like it is.
If you overturn
Yes.
the zoning officer's
Right.
decision,
If we tell them the zoning officer was wrong, they can use this where they can leave it where they want to
then
leave it.
the zoning officer will abide by your decision.
And he'll look at, I'm sorry, he won't look at the height. There's other questions about this
No, they
application.
still have to
Yeah.
comply with all other zoning bulk and area requirements. But as far as his decision, you're just saying he erred and this is his specific error.
Right.
That's what you would be doing tonight. Or are you finding that he did not err and he did not grant approval for this for all of the reasons that he grant, and you're saying that those were legitimate reasons?
Craig, then they have the right to come back to us and ask for variance
Yes.
on those issues.
If they're denied, they can come
'Cause
back and ask for variances, and they've already, I mean, you heard some testimony tonight that kind of leaned toward the variance side. I mean, you're a board of adjustment because no zoning ordinance is perfect. And in these specific cases, your code is really unclear and murky with regards to the treatment of these through lots. There's no mention of through lots anywhere in the ordinance. So,
So if we overturn the zoning officer, by de facto, they get a variance.
No.
Okay.
Well, no.
I don't think
They
so.
don't need one. Don't overthink it, okay? All you're deciding is whether, in your opinion, based on your ordinance, okay, the zoning officer was correct when he said that because this yard abuts a street, we're treating it as a front yard. That's what the zoning officer said. And your engineer said that's historically what we've done. That just like a corner lot touches streets, anything that touches a street, we consider a front yard, okay? They made cogent arguments that they disagree with that. They said that the building front is where the main entrance is, therefore the back of it, the opposite of that is the rear yard. These folks have also made a cogent argument that you have to have a rear yard somewhere, so if it's a through lot and both are fronts, then you've said there's no rear, and how can that possibly be? So those are the arguments that have been made, they're legitimate arguments. I've offered my opinion, I could be mistaken, but that's just my opinion. Craig offered his. So all you're gonna decide now is if the zoning officer was correct in treating a yard that abuts a street as a front yard under your ordinance. And then you say, we agree with the zoning officer, or we disagree. If you disagree, then that means he should treat it as a rear yard and issue a permit in the ordinary course if they comply with what a shed is, or an outbuilding, whatever this thing is supposed to be in a rear yard. So if you decide that he did the right thing, then he's gonna go do his job. If you decide he did the right thing, then the permit's denied. If you say he did the wrong thing, then it's gonna go back to the officer, he's gonna issue the permit, and they're gonna build a shed in that yard. That's
Mr.
all.
King, for clarity, just
Sure.
on the height issue, we're conceding that, right, we're not proposing more than 14.8 right now. The Coppola issue is a separate, unrelated issue, not before the board. And given the change in ordinance, it should not be part, the only issue should be, in other words, on the appeal is whether it's a front or rear yard, whether it's a 10-foot setback or a 20. I just want to clarify that the height issue is not part of should not be a part of the appeal. I don't want to confuse anybody.
No, we're not. The height issue is to me, is a red herring. I mean, we're not approving anything that's 20 feet, and when the officer, if we agree with him and he goes to issue the permit, and he pauses and says, should I issue this permit? He should look at the current ordinance, and if it says 15 feet, he should issue the permit, because that's the law now, it's 15 feet. If theirs is 14, then it's fine. I don't need a case to tell me that, that's common sense. But you tell me there's a case, I believe you. The judge got it right. Okay, so the next issue is, so what you have to do is, someone's got to make a motion, make it in the affirmative. A motion to confirm the zoning officer's position.
I just want.
Excuse me.
I just
How
want
would
to
you prefer we do it?
clarify that there's no one in the audience that
Yeah, that's what
is
I-
within 200 feet, and no one beyond 200 feet that wishes to speak. So that's closed.
I would ask that the
Counsel,
motion.
how would you like-
Yeah, I just think for clarity, whether or not it's a 10-foot setback applies or a 20-foot setback for this proposed structure. I think it's that simple, right? 10-foot would mean that it's.
It's an appeal. We got to do something in relation.
All
to
right, so the
decisions.
part of the decision,
Say either affirm, you know what affirm means, everybody? Either affirm the zoning board officer or reverse the zoning board officer. So if you affirm him, his decision denying the permit stands. If you reverse him, then that means you disagree with the officer.
And just so I can clarify, so if affirming means you're viewing that as a front yard,
Affirm means we agree with the zoning officer.
that the back of our house is a front
Think
yard.
of the Fs. Affirm, front.
yes.
Everybody understand that?
Yep.
Yeah, and reverse means you,
It's a backyard.
It's a backyard.
Reverse means it's a backyard. Affirm means that our back of our house is the front yard now.
I make the motion?
Motion by Ms. Sheehan.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Venuto.
Can we just read that again? Can you just state it again?
yeah, affirm means you're gonna.
No, I mean, state the whole thing. You affirm with the zoning officer, correct? That's what we're saying,
If you affirm, it means you agree with the zoning
Right.
officer, and this is a front yard.
right?
If you reverse, that means you disagree with the zoning officer, and this is a rear yard.
Okay, are we ready? Okay. Mr. Ledwin,
Affirm.
Mrs. Notch,
Confirm.
Ms. Sheehan,
Affirm?
Mr. Walsh,
Confirm.
Mr. Zexer,
Affirm.
Mr. Venuto,
Affirm.
Mrs. Werner.
Affirm.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We hope to see you again soon. Where's Karen? Everyone, remember that application when we do the year-end review of things we got to address in the ordinance? It wouldn't be a bad one.
Yeah, there's lots of holes that need to be
Yeah,
cleaned up.
it's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
I think when we, when we had done Beach Drive subdivision, we stated what the front was in that subdivision, remember, on the manor?
They were both fronts, that's why
That's,
you put, what, East Drive?
remember, it was right by Mount Vernon, I think, down that area? And we said we gave them 3 lots, we said they had to face the front has to be the beach.
Yeah, I don't remember. Oh, well, not one. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
But that was a corner lot. Yeah, we said what the front should be.
Yeah, we
But that
stated.
was for ingress and egress and stuff.
the best one is this pool in the new developments. That's the best.
We've done 3 of those.
Yeah. Another.
It's Pittsburgh Avenue.
Our next application is the Bassett Family LLC,
Kearney Street.
701 Kearney Avenue. This is an appeal from the decision of the zoning officer.
And variance relief, yeah, I was going to say, yeah. Okay, fine.
Evening. Members of the board, my name is Ray Wendt. I'm a partner with a law firm of Nemad, Davis, and Goldstein. I'm here this evening on an application that has 2 requests. The first is an appeal of the zoning officer's determination regarding second floor addition. We would like on second part of the application is a variance request. As I heard during the previous application, you had an appeal before you. We have an appeal before you, but we also have a variance request. By way of background, we were here in December of 2021 requesting this addition to the second floor, which is not along the street. It's between us and our neighbor. We obtained variance relief for floor area ratio, the FAR, and some setbacks. However, during that application, it was not raised that there was a roof pitch issue, in that we were not in the 12-to-4 ratio that is required under your ordinance. It was not raised by us. It was not raised in the professionals' reports. And it was just something that came up, and Mr. Bishop, your zoning officer who is reviewing these approvals, said, look, I cannot issue a permit because this roof pitch was not specifically addressed in the 2021 variance application. So we had to come back according to him and according to your professionals. Although we have asked for an appeal of your zoning official's determination, without waiving that appeal, we want to set that aside and simply ask for the variance first. We met the criteria necessary for the variances on this plan. It's the same exact plan as shown. We've highlighted it at Exhibit 7. It's the same exact roof pitch and plan that was approved back in 2021 under the same criteria of meeting the positive and negative criteria that is necessary for you to approve a variance. And I think the most expeditious way to complete this application tonight is to first ask for the variance. I don't see any difference in what we asked for last time. We came back because it was missed. The roof pitch was just missed last time. We've gotten HPC approval for this and the extension of that approval from 2 years ago. They are fine with it. We submitted that as well as part of our application package. There are 9 exhibits attached. I'd like those to be recognized as exhibits for purposes of this application. HPC is fine with this, and we hope that you're as well.
Can I just ask a qualifying question?
Sure.
The HPC reviewed and approved the plan showing this roof pitch?
Yes.
Proposed.
They did 2 years ago, and they approved the 2-year extension that we requested,
Okay.
and is
I
why.
want to make sure the record is crystal clear that they reviewed and recommended approval for this roof pitch.
Correct.
Thank you.
And just again, so the record's clear, on November 28th, 2023, they approved a 2-year extension of that same approval.
You're seeking a 2-year extension as well, right?
Exactly, as part of the variance. Our plan is to get the permits as soon as possible and be built by spring, early summer. But yes, we are also requesting a 2-year extension of the 2001 variance approvals, and we're requesting the actual variance approval for the roof pitch this evening.
So since the entire basis for the last approval was that this was aesthetically pleasing, historically accurate, and architecturally sound and balanced, the project, you believe those same purposes of zoning are advanced at this time, correct?
Correct, and that resolution advancing those goals are attached.
I just want to confirm, this is for the overhang, the extension, right? Because in this, I see that there's also a porch expansion. Is that the porch expansion, or is it for the roof, or, I guess I'm just clarifying, because I don't see the porch in the front of the house being expanded on any plans.
The porch in the front of the house is not being expanded in any way.
Okay, then,
It is the exact plan that was approved in December of 2021, no more and no less.
okay, because when I see on his comments in 2020, Craig's comments, on number 4, it says, a proposed front porch expansion on the structure. And I just want to make sure the roof we're talking about is that one roof and not the other roof.
If I may, when we approved this the last time, the porch that faces
Gurney.
Gurney, the top porch has no roof on it. They wanted to put a roof.
So they're considering that the front porch?
Right. They put
Okay,
a roof
that's
on
fine.
top of the top deck. I think that's what it is. This one right here? Yes, that one.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, because I didn't see it on the plans, but when I read it, it says front porch. That was why I was
That's what we approved the
questioning.
last time.
Right.
Okay.
Again, we're asking for nothing more than what was approved back in 2021. Just, we needed another variance, and we did not get it last time.
Can we go ahead and have your report, Craig?
Certainly. So the latest review memorandum that I did for this application is dated November 1st, 2023. It's a project that's located in the residential seasonal district. You've heard Mr. Quint explain what they're seeking tonight with regards to the appeal. They're putting that aside just so we qualify the variance. The roof slope proposed has been indicated at 2.4 inches in 12. The requirement of section 525-60J6 says no residential structure shall be constructed with a roof having a pitch less than 4 inches in 12. So the standard is 4 inches in 12, and they're only at 2.4 in 12. So they're below, they don't meet that minimum roof slope requirement, which tells me that the zoning officer caught something that we missed during our review. So I think that the zoning officer made the appropriate determination. So in the case of appeal, I would think that the board, obviously that roof slope is less than the minimum requirement. He caught something that we missed, the applicant didn't ask for, it was omitted, and now they're asking us to grant this variance alongside with the 8 that were granted in resolution 12/16/2021. And those are highlighted on page 3 to 6 of my review memo. That's just for historical purposes so that you know what you granted. This is quite simply just granting one additional variance for that minimum roof slope requirement of section 525-60J6.
And just one other comment. The roof slope that we're asking for on the north side of the house matches the roof slope on the south side of the house. So it's a balancing situation, and there's a symmetry that's involved with that, which is a part of my narrative that we submitted.
Yeah, I don't need to go into any further detail. Any approvals that are granted should be conditioned on the approvals, the conditions of approval that were set forth in the original board consideration and indicated in resolution 12/16/2021.
Okay.
Just in case this ever comes up again, I have to say, I have some question whether this is really a roof, but that'll be for another day. I'm not sure that this is directed to, there's things called extended facades and parapets, and a roof to me is the top of the main structure, and I didn't know that everything that sticks off the cover of a front porch or something like that has to have the pitch of a roof. And if that's the case, I thought a lot of things that are over a front door didn't match the pitch of a roof. I thought they were just things that were overhangs or facade extensions or something. So if this comes up later, I mean, it's appropriate to ask for the variance, and I think it's the easy way out, and I told Ray that when he called me. But I do have some questions about whether this was directed to things that stick out over doorways. So this one's a little in between, but I have some questions about that, because roof line is the top edge of a peaked roof, or in the case of an extended facade or parapet, the uppermost point of said facade or parapet. What's an extended facade?
But I think they're also talking about the addition, that roof pitch on the addition.
Yeah, there is. This one is kind of in between. So it's a little thing that sticks out from a house. I didn't know that was, so it's a little.
No, on the other side of the house, they're putting on those 2 bathrooms, and that has a pitch roof. That's,
I understand. I guarantee, though, in the next 6 months to a year, we're going to have someone who's going to have the front thing sticking out from their front door, and it's not going to have the pitch of a roof, and there's going to be some question whether that's a roof or what that is. So I see that coming. So in terms of our list of things we want to think about, this pitch thing,
Didn't the board just
approve a new
approve
one.
a similar application?
Yeah.
Yes.
For the Drake
Yes.
property?
Yes.
Yes,
we
yes.
did.
Yep.
So,
That was
And
a
this
por-
was just
That was a
in-
porch of some kind.
And this was a new ordinance they just put in about the pitched roofs. They had just upgraded it or so, I think.
Yeah, so, anyway, I don't know. Because it's not a drain, it's an architectural consideration, because you don't want flat roofs, okay? I just didn't know that applied to things that cover doorways or porches and stuff, so something to think about, but anyway.
We're open to the public within 200 feet and open beyond 200 feet and closing.
Okay, the motion we're going to do first, the applicant's request, which I think is appropriate, is a motion to approve the variance for the roof pitch. Testimony is that you've already approved this once and thought it looked okay. So it's the same thing you approved before. So they're asking you to approve that based on the same basis, which is desirable visual environment, balancing out the structure, which was the main reason we granted it before, was that it created balance. So they want to keep it that way. So that's the application.
Okay, can we have that motion?
So move.
Moved by Mr. Ledwin,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Zetzker.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes,
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yeah.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
That should be the next motion, yep.
And can you just give some reasons why you need the 2-year extension?
My client applied for the permits back in September. The goal was to have the addition completed by November. The delay was in part from contractor supply issues and just some timing issues. But we did apply, and we were planning to complete the addition as approved within the 2-year period. And the only reason we were not able to, apart from the fact that we didn't apply until September, and we admit that, but we could have gotten it done, was because of this issue that was caught by your zoning officer. We fully intend to get this done by spring, early summer, at the latest, but we're requesting the 2 years just in case, because we all know calamities happen. And we fully intend, again, to just go as soon as we get the approval, 45 days expires, and there's no appeal issues, to apply for the permits again and have this thing done by late spring. And that's why we're asking for the 2-year extension, respectfully.
can I just ask a clarifying question? Only because I know in the past, the board has been giving extensions without notifying the neighbors. So I just want to make sure that, because I know council passed a resolution that neighbors within 200 feet had to be notified. So they were all notified, correct?
Correct.
Of this extension request?
That's absolutely correct.
That's right, thank you.
Okay, so we make a motion.
And it never expired, correct?
I'm sorry?
It didn't expire, right?
The notice?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
As long as they applied before the end of the 2 years.
Right. They
Yeah,
applied
the way
before
this-
it expired.
The way, yeah, we applied within the 2 years for the 2-year extension, so we're fine, even though we're in January. We technically expired in December, so we're, under the ordinance, we're okay.
Your 2 years will go from December, not when we approve it, just so you know.
Correct. It won't go from today, it will go from December 12, 2023.
Read that motion or just?
If someone should make a motion to grant the extension and then vote on it, yep.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Zetzer, seconded by Ms. Sheehan.
Thank you. Mr. Lewin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Members of the board, for the record, my 14-year-old daughter Kendall is watching tonight live stream, so I'm glad that you approved this application, so she actually knows that I do an okay job as being a lawyer. Other than that, guys, thank you very much.
Just say in the back of your
And they're
head.
always this easy. This is what you do for a living, these easy applications, and you just come in, cruise, get approvals, and leave. That's what you do all the time.
Exactly.
That's it.
Folks, thank you very much.
Good job, Mr. Wendt, thank you. Thank you for being brief.
Our next application is Cape Home Investment LLC, 401 Pittsburgh Avenue. Applying for variance relief.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. John Emenhauser of the DeWeese Law Firm here this evening on behalf of the applicant, Cape Home Investment 2 LLC. As indicated, this is an application seeking variance relief at 401 Pittsburgh Avenue. It's identified on your tax map as Block 1165, Lot 4.02, and it's located in the R3 medium-density residential district. The property is currently situated as a vacant lot. It's on the corner of Pittsburgh and Idaho Avenues, and therefore, as a corner lot, it has frontages under the ordinance on both of those two streets. The applicant's proposed development would conform with all bulk and area requirements of the R3 zone, aside from minimum required front yard building setback along Idaho Avenue. Again, this being a corner lot, we are fronting on both Pittsburgh and Idaho. The front of this proposed structure, as is indicated on the architectural plans, will front and face onto Pittsburgh. Therefore, we technically view Idaho as a side yard for this particular proposed development. Representing and speaking on behalf of the applicant tonight is Brian Murphy. Brian's a professional engineer and principal with the firm of MB Engineering. I know he's been before the board before, but I'm happy to elicit credentials if necessary. And then also with us this evening is Marcelo Mogavero. He is the principal managing member of Cape Home Investment 2, the applicant here. I don't intend to elicit testimony from him, but if he can be sworn, if the board has any questions, I think he'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, gentlemen, our board engineer remains under oath. Do each of you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Would you like credentials of Mr. Murphy?
No, it's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Brian, if you can, just for the benefit of the board, can you go over the current conditions of the lot and then what we're proposing to do through the application here? Me or him? I'm sorry. Okay.
Can you quiet down a little bit?
I will. I'm sorry.
I'm going to stand up anyway, if I may, and refer to the...
Bring a microphone.
Sure. I'm referring to the site plan that was submitted as part of this application. And at the bottom of my pencil is leaning is Pittsburgh Avenue. And to the right is Idaho Avenue. The structure, the main structure is shaded. There are photographs. So to answer your question, Mr. Emenhauser, the existing condition of the lot, as shown in the photographs, is a vacant lot.
And as I indicated, our proposal here is to construct a single-family residential dwelling, which is permitted in this zone, correct?
That is correct. It will look a lot like a lot of the other homes that front on this side of Pittsburgh Avenue. It'll be consistent with the neighborhood.
So, Brian, in terms of the bulk and area requirements of the zone, it's been identified, we've applied for, and Mr. Hurlis has identified that we need a front yard building setback for the dwellings, how it's situated along Idaho Avenue. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, 20 feet is required for front yard setback. We're proposing 8 along Idaho, correct?
That is correct.
Now, can you provide testimony to the board as to why you believe the relief we're asking for would be justified along Idaho Avenue, given how this dwelling is proposed to be situated on the lot.
Sure. As we know, Pittsburgh Avenue is the main street. It runs towards perpendicular to the ocean. We have Idaho Avenue. In this situation, is very unique in that it's only partially improved. And if you look at the photographs as well as the key maps, you can see that it's all vacant land in the back, undevelopable land. I believe it's all open space. There is a defined wetland area to the back, so it will not be developed further. So there was a discussion in the earlier application about corner lots, and that, unlike on Idaho Avenue, you would want the front of this structure to be consistent with any homes that would be down Idaho Avenue. And that would be reasonable. But in this situation, there are no other homes going down Idaho Avenue. The only other home on Idaho Avenue is directly opposite, which came before this board for a variance, similar to what we're seeking this evening. So at 20 feet, our lot is only 50 feet from Idaho Avenue. Having an 8 foot on one side and 20 on the other would be a long, narrow property. So to have a structure that's consistent with the other homes that front on Pittsburgh Avenue, we believe that the setback, the front yard setback on Idaho Avenue is very reasonable. For the motoring public, for driving down Pittsburgh Avenue, it will look, act, and appear as is a side yard, but technically it is a front yard because it does front on Idaho Avenue.
So Brian, a lot of what you just went over could be considered as a request for relief under the C1 standard. Is that right?
That is correct.
Is it also your opinion that if you evaluated this application under the C2 substantial benefit standard, the board could also find reasons to grant this application?
I believe that it would be very reasonable. There are a number of special reasons that would play into this that would say the benefits, in my mind, significantly outweigh the detriments for this application.
And would some of those be the fact that right now there's a vacant lot, what's being proposed is in line with a lot of the existing development along Pittsburgh Avenue?
Correct. It'll be very similar to many of the other homes that currently are on Pittsburgh Avenue, so it will be in keeping with this immediate neighborhood of Cape May City.
And aside from the positive aspects that you believe will be promoted through granting the relief, is it also your professional opinion that granting the application wouldn't result in any sort of substantial detriment to the public good or to the zone plan or ordinance here in the city of Cape May?
No, I don't see a detriment. Again, it's a very unique situation where Idaho Avenue only goes back not even just about to the rear of the house, and it will not be developed because of environmental reasons. So based on that, I see no significant detriment to the zone plan and zoning ordinance of the city of Cape May.
Okay.
Any idea of what the setback is on the house on the other side of Idaho to
I
Idaho?
believe it's 8 feet, similar to what we're seeking this evening.
Yeah, the board's resolution for that application indicated the relief along Idaho was 8 feet.
Okay.
And then they had the similarly 20 along Pittsburgh as we're proposing. Brian, before you presented the application tonight, did you have a chance to review Mr. Hurlis's review letter that he sent to us? It's dated January 2nd.
Yes, I have.
So I know there was a response that you provided to that letter, but there was indicated in there that we also need relief related to parking within the site triangle. Without cutting Mr. Hurlis off, can you kind of go over whether you believe that's appropriate here, and if so, why you think it's appropriate to grant such relief?
I believe it was an appropriate comment because I made an error on our plan. And the error is there is parking in the garage. We show 2 parking spaces in the driveway. We also show the site triangle associated with Idaho and Pittsburgh Avenue as required by the city ordinance. My error was these parking spaces really should be 10 foot closer. They would park partially underneath the deck. It's a 10-foot deck. So if we were to move these cars 10 feet closer to the building, which they would be able to physically be able to do, it would be outside of the city's required site triangle requirements. In response to Mr. Hurlis's letter, he asked me to look at the AASHTO, American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, site triangle, which is a little more complex to draw. Suffice it to say that it would be a car coming down Idaho Avenue and looking to their right down to the cars coming down Pittsburgh Avenue. And the way that is set up, the key part of it is either the curbing or the crosswalk extended back 14 feet. And if you were to draw that triangle, which I did not here on this plan, but in my office, it does not touch our property. So in my opinion, the AASHTO site triangle does not apply to this. That being said, we have shown on the plan, and there will be a restriction to maintain the Cape May City site triangle requirements. But we don't need a variance in my mind.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add regarding the application or in response to the review letter by Mr. Hurlis?
No, I think that this application, there is almost a very similar structure that was currently being developed immediately adjacent to it. As we stated earlier, there is a structure on the opposite side of Idaho Avenue, which is similar to what's being proposed here this evening. I believe that this structure, the way it's been designed, meets the ordinance requirements, with the exception of the front yard setback of Idaho Avenue. And I think it is in keeping with this section of the neighborhood of Cape May City.
And if approved this evening, would you be agreeable to abiding by the remaining comments and notes in Mr. Hurlis' letter as a condition of approval?
Absolutely.
Okay.
These are all very reasonable.
Mr. Chair, I have nothing further of Mr. Murphy at this time.
So let's have your report.
Thank you, board members. The latest review memorandum for this application is dated January 2nd, 2024. This is a project located in the R3 Medium Density Residential District. You have what is a proposed single-family detached dwelling, which is a permitted use in the district. There were no completeness items, so there's no waivers necessary for the completeness items. They have provided a complete application, and we did recommend deeming the application complete. This is a conforming application with the exception of one bulk requirement, which is the building setback line for Idaho Avenue. 20 foot is the requirement of the R3 district, 8 foot is proposed. This is a vacant lot, so there's no existing condition. So that is the variance that you're considered. I agree with the engineer's testimony that the parking in the site triangle issue that I raised can be mitigated by pushing those parking spaces closer to the actual driveway, the actual garage door, and alleviate that variance. But the testimony would also support granting that variance from the AASHTO standpoint. Our site triangle requirements are a bit dated. The more acceptable engineering standard is the AASHTO site triangle, which is based on geometrics as well as the speed limits on the appropriate roadways. You have sufficient width on Pittsburgh Avenue. The board has had numerous applications in recent history, and Pittsburgh Avenue is 100-foot wide. A normal street is typically 50 or 60-foot wide, so the width there, and you can see it on the plan, there's a very wide area between the front property line and the curb line. So therefore, I don't believe there's going to be any site issues there, and there's no site variance or site triangle variance from that section, so we can strike that from my review comments. I'll move on to the general review comments, which all should be standard conditions of approval. These are very typical of this type of development. Item number 1 is providing the first floor elevation on the plan and complying with the requirements of the code as well as the flood damage protection requirements. Item 2, I think our initial review, we asked the applicant to provide some stormwater mitigation, and they have done so, and we found that plan acceptable. That's an informational. And we'd also asked that they have to comply with Chapter 525, the minimum stormwater management and grading requirements. That's a standard condition that we apply to all of our approvals. Let's see, item number 4 deals with the connections for utilities. We had a hard time evaluating whether there's existing meters and services for this lot. So we would ask that the applicant clarify that and also provide evidence that they have gotten city sewer and water department approvals. Item number 5 is sidewalk. So in this case, they have provided sidewalk along the full frontage of Pittsburgh Avenue and partially along Idaho Avenue. I don't know whether they need to extend that all the way to the full length of the lot. I think they've stopped about 40 feet short of that. The likelihood of that ever being developed is unknown at this point. There are environmental concerns to those lots. We may want to just affix a condition that says if that street is ever extended, then this applicant will be required to extend that sidewalk to the rear of the lot? Is that, if it's ever?
Oh, you mean into the marsh? Yeah. Yeah.
Towards that, yes.
Yeah.
That would be fine as a condition.
Okay.
We'd agree to that.
And our standard condition is that the applicant is required to replace the sidewalk, in this case, to satisfaction of the board engineer. We evaluate it prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Item number 6, they proposed additional curb cuts. So as a condition of approval, they have to submit plans to the superintendent of streets and roads and comply with any requirements for improvements along the city right-of-way. It should be noted that Pittsburgh Avenue was recently repaved, may be under moratorium, so you're going to have to comply with any requirements that the city has for that street opening.
Understood.
Item number 7 is our standard condition that they have to provide the required inspection escrow, and that ties the certificate of occupancy issuance to the acceptance of the improvements. Item number 8 is compliance with the recommendations of the Cape May Shade Tree Commission, Fire Department, and Public Works Department. We did receive letters from the Fire Department dated 1/19/24, recommended approval with no comments. Public Works Department recommended approval dated 1/11/24 with no comments, and the Shade Tree Commission recommended approval with the following conditions.
It's placing
Their
barrier.
penmanship needs to get better. 8-inch deciduous tree to the right rear of lot should be protected with a mesh or solid barrier.
1 foot per inch of diameter.
Of diameter to prevent
Root
root damage during construction. So I would ask that the applicant revise the plans to incorporate that condition.
January 9th.
I'm sorry, the date of that is 1/9/24.
And I assume that that's the radius associated?
Yeah,
It's because the roots spread out
I
a
understand.
lot further, so it's just.
so whatever the diameter of the tree, they ask for 1 foot of,
Per inch,
The radius.
per
So
inch
the
of
10
diameter.
diameter,
Correct.
You get 10-foot radius around the tree.
Right.
correct. And you'll show safety fencing around that tree to show it
Right,
protected.
it's about the drip line, correct?
Yeah. That's what they're trying to establish what that drip line is.
Yep.
Okay, so the plan should be revised consistent with that. Item number 9, any approval should be conditional on compliance with all other state, county, and local approvals. Item 10 is for informational purposes, but this project is not located within the historic district, so there's no HPC approval required. 11 is our standard condition that they have to comply with any and all applicable affordable housing requirements at the time of approval, issuance of building permits, or certificate of occupancy, whichever is applicable. And then finally, should the board grant approval, the applicant is required to provide revised compliance sets that comply with any conditions that the board sets. That's a summary of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions that.
Craig, I have one question on the stormwater system.
Okay.
Is there a reason why it goes out the rear?
In this case, the topography grades from front to back. So typically, we like to bring it out to the street and collect it in the
Right,
system.
yeah.
In this case, the discharge is out the rear because the topography is taking it that way.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not putting it out there to flood other people's properties down the way.
No, this is,
Okay.
they're mitigating, they're providing more retainage of the stormwater, so they're discharging less from their site than what is existing in the condition that the site exists now.
Okay, just,
So they're making the stormwater situation better.
okay. Then I also have another question. I noticed the house that's on the other side of Idaho there, that the parking is coming out onto Idaho and not onto Pittsburgh.
Right.
And I'm not familiar with how that was granted.
Okay, there was if that was the old Realtor's office, if I remember
Right.
correctly, and there was already a driveway curb cut that existed there, and the applicant took advantage of that.
Okay, I didn't know if it was because of the site triangle also going into Pittsburgh.
No. And if memory serves me correctly, the board at the time when we granted relief for that required that the building front be oriented towards Pittsburgh Avenue. So there was a condition that was set forth in this.
I think we made them have the building front both. I think that we required like a wraparound porch.
Yeah, so we had unique characteristics with that. I didn't see that condition. I would have raised that condition in my review memo for this one, but it seems like this is a front-loaded, oriented towards Pittsburgh design.
Yeah, that's correct.
If I may add to that, too, the property across the street, two of the cars, they park in the right-of-way of Idaho Avenue. There's only a couple of feet. There's 8 feet from the building, so the rest of it. Sidewalk. So we would need a variance to park in the street. The way we show it here, we have all 4 parking spaces are on this property.
I know. I have concern there with the fact that we're going to have to tell people that they have to pull up 10 feet in order for that site triangle to be good. To me, I don't know how you're going to police people not parking in that site triangle.
Well, that's why I mentioned the site triangle testimony that Mr. Murphy put on the record. Even if they didn't, there still wouldn't be a safety issue.
Okay, because I didn't know how we could circumvent and grant something that's a safety issue.
Yeah. So that's why I was concerned about it, and that's why I
Right.
asked, all right,
So is there a way, I mean, you said, is there a way to confirm that we are not granting,
Mr. Murphy's going to be required to revise the plans to show that parking pushed forward out of that site triangle.
yeah, but if these cars don't pull up, are they going to be in that site triangle?
They will be in the city site triangle, but the Ashto site triangle demonstrates that there's not a safety issue.
Okay.
Okay.
But we're going against the city's site triangle.
If they're not complying with the approved plan, they theoretically would be in the city site triangle, and that's an enforcement issue. That's a code violation. They could, handle it that way. But there's a factor of safety that's built in to me because of the sufficient width of Pittsburgh Avenue and the sufficient width of Idaho Avenue and this geometry of the site demonstrates that even if they were to have a violation there, it still would be safe from a traffic safety standpoint.
Even with the vegetation that's there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the site triangle wouldn't even encroach onto the site, as Mr. Murphy testified.
Okay, so but they can't park in that apron then, is what you're saying?
They can't park an apron if they're complying with the site plan. That's the city right away.
Yeah. Okay.
Craig, how does it work with their sidewalk? The applicants agree to extend that sidewalk if need be, someone develops that, but we could be talking, 15.
For a deed notice so that any future property owner knows that they would have to extend it. We've done that in the past.
I hate to see, I don't want the city to get stuck with it, and I also
Right.
don't want to see it.
That's why I recommended it, is like, so are you acceptable to?
We'd be acceptable to that.
Okay.
A deed notice would be fine with us in order to do that, put anyone on notice, future owners.
Good point, thank you.
I'm just going to open it up to the public within 200 feet, beyond 200 feet, seeing none closed.
I think Mr. Ledman has a question.
I have a question. Just, it's nitpicking, but if you look at the A4.1 drawings for the deck.
Okay.
You just need to make, whoever the MV Engineering, is that your firm?
Yes, it is.
Well, you need to make an adjustment on the support for the deck,
That's for the second floor.
second floor.
That's the support for the second floor.
I understand that, but you can't get the cars moved up with the way you've got your drawings.
No, it's, I know exactly what you're looking at. That's the support for there's a roof over top of that deck for a portion of that deck. It's not at grade.
Can you just add a note to the plan showing that's a second floor support post,
Correct.
just to clarify the
Yeah.
plan?
It is.
Well, that's exactly what I'm pointing out, is you've got
Yeah.
these supports, and you're going to move the cars up. Right. Well, they're not going to be able to move up because of the supports. So your drawing is in conflict with the A4.1.
We'll clarify that.
Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions, comments?
I have a question about the paper that we received saying old and new, when it talks about the lot, this part here. Are we changing something? When it says old was lot
I don't-
4 and lot 5, and it says new is lot 4.01
Did
and
that
lot
come-
4.02.
Is that from us, or is that?
So
I don't think it's-
that was by the tax assessor, and it seemed that the board's been asking for that when there's, so that they know that this lot is the correct number, the block and lot.
Okay. This isn't a minor subdivision plan, though.
It is not. So just to give some clarity, I know, Mr. Hurlis, I think I provided you this info. Previously, there was a dwelling that existed on both this lot and the neighboring lot, which would be,
It's 4 and 5.
yes. So there was a lot, if you look at 4.01 and 4.02, which is how they're identifying now, there was previously a structure that straddled that center lot. That structure was demolished, but there was never a need for a subdivision due to the fact that both of the underlying lots were conforming, so they never would have merged. So they were both conforming at 50 by 100, I think is what the required minimums are in the zone. So when that building was taken down, we never needed to subdivide to create two lots because they always actually existed as two. And the city solicitor confirmed that with me. That was a discussion I had with him well before we filed this application in order to ensure that we didn't need to get that relief and bring that application.
So then it's not a subdivision because.
It's not a subdivision, so there's no creation of lots or numbering of lots. If the tax assessor wanted to renumber the lots, they could certainly do that as they're permitted to do so.
And my other question has to do with just confirming that house is only 8 feet that's on Idaho, the other one?
I have a copy of the, somewhere here. I have a copy of the board's resolution from 2017. I'm happy to provide it.
Yeah,
But
if you could, just, I don't have that information with me.
I mean, I just have, my concern is we're always saying that we have to conform with setbacks on both sides. And here we're not going to, it's supposed to be 20 feet, but we're saying, 8 is sufficient. I just don't know where we draw that conclusion when we are enforcing it in other places for that setbacks.
We're in a lot with a bunch of vacant area around it.
So I
Want
can
them to
just,
review the reasons again? I mean, they can do that.
I mean, to me, it's not very compelling for this, when it's a new house. I can understand, we talk about people that are on corner lots that are not new houses. The other house on Pittsburgh that's down a little further, we just had that application before. Those two houses, I think it's between Maryland and New York, had to comply with their setbacks of 20 and 20. But here, we're not going to enforce it.
we're happy, I can address that if we can. So, well, I guess first, I have a copy of that resolution. Not typical to mark a prior resolution. Do you want me to mark this if I'm going to provide it? Okay. Can I show it to Ms. Sheehan?
What's the number? Can I write down the number?
Yeah, sure. It's resolution number 11-09-2017, and then :1.
Thank you.
And the address it has is 311 Pittsburgh Avenue, so it's the other side of Idaho.
Okay.
And you can see here that the only relief they sought, granted, exactly the same as we're asking for.
8 foot.
How wide is this property?
It's 50 feet wide, and I think we were just going to go over that under hardship criteria. If
I
you-
thought he did it already.
I think so too, but just for
It's eight-
clarity.
If it's 8 feet, if it were 8 feet on one side and 20 other, that'd be 28 feet, so then you'd have a 22-foot wide house.
But if you considered Idaho as a
And you're
front,
consistent-
wouldn't you actually consider that a
Helping
rear?
here.
Okay,
And
thank
Your
you.
testimony is that's inconsistent with the neighborhood. Are there a lot of 22-foot wide houses in this neighborhood?
I don't recall seeing any.
But this house previously, before they knocked it down, was facing Idaho. So you can, I mean, it's not, it's say, oh, they're all facing Pittsburgh, but it was originally facing Idaho.
The front door was.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, so how would that change the dynamics of the width of the property?
It does. And that house that existed there was situated on what would have been a 100 by 100 lot. It was situated in the middle. I shouldn't say that, right? There were two 50 by 100 lots that it straddled. So the way that it was situated at the time wasn't as if it was situated on a 50 by 100 lot. It was actually sitting on 100 by 100 worth of space. So it's much easier for it to conform to those requirements under that situation.
On,
I guess the other thing I'd want.
hold on, I thought, is there a picture of what's around this house?
There is.
Can you show that picture?
It's on the site plan. If you look at the bottom picture, you'll see, it's an aerial shot of Pittsburgh Avenue, and you'll see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 existing homes that are similar in size to what's being proposed here this evening.
Are those
Let me
lots,
explain it this way.
are those lots 50 also? Those lots are 50 also?
Can I answer your question? So the purpose, this harkens back to the last application, where the reason on corner lots that you treat them both as front yards is for purposes of the streetscape, so that the people on the adjoining properties have the benefit of having front yards, okay, next to them. I believe in this application, the area where they're going into the 20-foot front yard, I don't believe there is anyone on the next lot that would now have the front yard next to them be 8 feet. There's nobody there. So I thought that the primary basis for this variance, and what makes it different than some of the others, is that on the corner lot, there's no one there who now has a house jutting out 12 more feet there, which is what the corner lot restriction seeks to avoid. So that's why in this particular application, it may be appropriate to grant a variance, whereas other applications, suppose the corner of Pick, Kearney, and,
Well, I'm talking about Pittsburgh and New Jersey, where we required them to be 20 feet
right, but
in.
aren't there houses on each side of them?
No, they're a corner lot,
Right, and on a corner lot, there's still houses next to corner lot.
right.
Okay, that's the point. So those houses have front yards. So the house that's on Pittsburgh to the right of them, that person next to them wants it to be 20 feet back. On, what was the road at intersection?
Idaho.
What state?
It was New York. New York.
On New York, the person who's next to them on New York wants it to be 20 feet back. I thought in this application, the point was that on Idaho, there's no one next to them who would want it 20 feet back. Isn't that the testimony?
That's correct, and not only that,
Okay.
there's essentially an encumbrance to the land behind it with all the wetlands that exist now.
That's what I thought the
Correct.
testimony. That's what makes this an application that they believe justifies a variance, because there's a unique circumstance that affects this lot that may not affect other corner lots.
Okay.
Okay? So that's the basis for the variance if you're inclined to grant it. So that's the distinguishing feature of this, I thought.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And I think that was the distinguishing feature of the property on the other corner, because they have the same situation right across the street, which we granted a couple years ago.
Yes.
Okay, so. Guess what we're saying.
for me?
Yes.
Sorry.
Awkward pause, yeah.
The motion I'd recommend being made, and how you vote is up to you, but you've always been in the affirmative. The motion I recommend being made is to grant the application for variances, numbers.
Item number one.
Oh, the site triangle they don't need, right? So just number
Do
one.
not need.
All right, so the grant variance number 1 on page 2 of the engineer's report, subject to the conditions outlined by the board engineer, including those relating to the Shade Tree Commission and the sidewalk deed notice that they'll extend the sidewalk if anything is ever constructed down Idaho.
And they will revise the plans to move that parking forward out of the site triangle and revise the plans to eliminate what is perceived as showing the posts conflicting with that parking space.
Yes, correct, yes, agreed.
I didn't do the post one. All right, I got that one.
Okay. Somebody make that motion? Okay. Motion by Mr. Ledwin,
Second.
sorry. Seconded by Mr. Venuto.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice night. Thank you.
Another item of business is to approve the bills for our attorney and our engineer. If someone would like to make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Notch, and I'm not sure who seconded. Seconded by Mr. Venuto.
Sam?
Thank you. Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Thank you.
And a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that.
Second.
I want to stay here a couple hours longer.
Mr.
Who
Walsh and
motioned?
Mr. Zetzger.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
I do in 1 hour.
Hey, Craig.